All right, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. How is everyone doing today? Nice to see you. And good to be back on the Adobe channel this morning. Great seeing and catching up with Michael and Rufus from OFFF in Barcelona. So for those of you who were lucky enough to attend that show, so cool. I was there a couple years ago and made a lot of contacts, and it was great fun. Put your pants on, Finch. It is Beetlejuice time. That's right. Hey, Ian. Hey, G-Spy Gaming. How are you? CBR. I'm going to raise the roof with some noise reduction. We're going to raise and reduce. All right. Well, I'm going to get my headphones on, because we've got a lot of cool stuff to cover today. Is it a Bowie reference, Finn? I'll have to go. I don't even remember what I wrote in it now. I'm good. Nice shirt. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm back to my my character animator Red Monster shirt today. So, Echo Sith, how are you? Oh, yeah. Admiral Shane. Hey, great to see you, too. Okay. Sorry, I was moving some things around from, was it Monday or Tuesday? I was streaming from this PC system, and, oh, yes. Oh, Finch, are you just getting that now? Damn, dude. Yeah. I changed it the day after, right? Because I was, if everyone's wondering, so, the lower third, right there, Sound and Vision, that was the name of a collection, a best of collection of David Bowie's, and right after he died, I changed the title. I think it was originally Adobe On Air with Beetlejuice, and kind of in the spirit of wanting to show his influence, I retitled it Sound and Vision. You don't pay attention. Nice glasses. Thank you very much. So, hey, Stan Arthur, great to see you. Namani Vishal, great. Hey, Fal Pals. Don't you wonder sometimes about Sound and Vision? Very good reference there. All right, so you know what? We're going to get started. We've got an enormous amount of stuff to cover for an hour. And this is part 4 of Audio 101. Today, focusing on noise reduction and audio restoration. Now, originally, I wasn't going to do these... I wasn't going to do noise reduction up front, because it's pretty complex and there's a lot involved, and I thought, well, maybe more fundamentals would be necessary before we kind of tackle this, because noise reduction is not unlike a lot of things in audio. It is kind of an art form once you really understand how to do it. And sometimes you can do amazing things with just like simple tweaks and little techniques that I'm going to show you today. As it turns out, though, because Monday's Audio 101 was about the Spectral Frequency Display, those of you who were there will recall the Spectral Frequency Display allowing us to see frequency over time, which is what we're looking at here. Because I did that on Monday, you get the added benefit of now already knowing all about the Spectral Frequency Display. So now I can show you how to use Spectral to do noise reduction. And actually, in that lesson, it began with kind of a noise reduction example. It wasn't a noise reduction tutorial, but it was to showcase how this view works doing noise reduction examples. So if you're when you watch this on the VOD, which by the way, this will be available immediately on the Adobe Twitch channel here, as well as on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jason Levine video. Also, about an hour or so after this broadcast finishes, go back and watch episode 3 if you want to know kind of the ins and outs of the Spectral Frequency Display. Here, you'll know and have a better understanding of what I'm now doing in part 4. Okay? All right, so let's get started. Shall we? Hey, Legacy of Pi, sounds good. Oh, your sound is off because you're filming and doing a talking head. And all right, Stan. Well, that's okay. I know you'll catch it later. Hey, Rulu, nice to see you. Yeah, you know what's funny about these glasses? I always try and mimic the exact same pair and style. All right, I don't want to get too derailed. It's early. It's the start of the day. All right. We'll get back to the glasses later. All right? Thank you. Okay. Ian215 Bird 4. Hey there. Okay. Noise reduction. So let's kill the background music as nice as it is to have right now. I'm gonna get rid of that. All right. So when we talk about noise reduction, there are, let's see, how many? Well, there's so many different elements to this. And the first section here, for the first about 15 minutes, I'm going to focus on just performing basic noise reduction, reducing the sound of various types of ambient, consistent noises. And by that, I mean, I actually made notes for myself so I can kind of stay on track, which, you know, I never do. So ambient noises, that could be just outdoor, just the sound of outdoors, right? It's not necessarily wind, it's just kind of the you know, the ambient sound around you. Or it could be the ambient sound around you in an echoey room. Or it could be fans, right? HVAC systems, aircon, computer fans, camera noises, right? These are less. It's funny, we used to say camera noise all the time when they had tape transports in them. You know, my DSLR makes no noise when it's filming anymore, so camera noise is not so commonly encountered today. But you know, hiss from tape, and when we talk about hiss, I really want to differentiate. People say hiss a lot. Hiss means analog tape, all right? So if someone really has a hiss problem, do you have a hiss problem? There's a pill for that. If you have a hiss problem, we have a specific filter for hiss reduction, although noise reduction, the main filter, can be used for hiss reduction as well. But hiss typically involves, you know, high frequency coming off of analog tape. And then we have specific sounds, you know, that are not consistent, that are irregular, that we try and remove or take out or attenuate. And for that, we use different techniques. But we're going to start with some of the fundamentals of, I've got something, there's noise on it, how do I get rid of it? All right. So I'm going to start with a very basic, commonly encountered thing here. This is actually a voice recording from one of our Twitch streams. I was recording the very mic that I'm talking into here. And if I just kind of play this back for you, I don't know what I'm saying here, by the way, so hopefully it's PC. I was singing. I was singing The Doors or something here. Okay, it was like a live talking singing stream.
I couldn't really tell. It doesn't. Piano sounds dry to me.
All right, so you can hear it's me and it's talking. Now, outside of the talking, as we look at the waveform here, if you have a hiss problem, call animal control. Hissy fit, yes. Do you see this stuff down here? Do you see what's going on down here? That, my friends, is effectively what computer fans, air conditioning, this is what it'll often look like in a waveform view. And you can very easily see the differences between when I'm saying something.
I couldn't really tell.
And when there's just noise. Okay? You can see that, and in fact, you can actually hear my gardeners, the leaf blowers behind us there. And then throughout this file, you can see that this noise kind of persists the whole time. Now, this isn't 100% consistent because it's got a lot of different elements here. But this is a good visual example of the kind of things you encounter, all right? So you've got a file, you've done a voice recording, maybe you've used your iPhone, maybe you've used your DSLR camera, maybe you've just captured it from somewhere. You're playing it back, and there's this noise. Now, you're probably not hearing it super loud at the moment. Let me amplify it for you so you can hear it a little bit better. And that's kind of part of the learning curve too, is that just because you can't necessarily hear it unless it's super cranked, when files are unprocessed, sure, things are not as noticeable, but once you start to equalize, once you start to compress, once you start to add effects, you're adding effects, you're equalizing, you're processing that noise as well. So when you have a file that has noise in it, you want to get rid of that ahead of time before messing about, because ultimately everything that you do afterwards is processing that noise that you didn't want in the first place. So I just made it a little bit louder here.
Oh, one thing fell.
Now this is a tricky one because you can actually hear like zzz, got my gardeners in the back there. All right, so this one may be a little more tricky. But in any case, if you're new to noise reduction, you can see the noise there. You can see my talking. How do we get rid of it? All right, now there are, as always, multiple ways to do kind of the same thing in Adobe Audition. Now, the easiest, the path to least resistance here, is to use something like the adaptive noise reduction, and I'm going to show you both of these. Now, I can show you that first, but because this is a 101, because this is a learning class, I wouldn't go here first. And here's why. Now, you'll know enough to make this decision later. I find that by being able to kind of isolate visually where noises live in a file and being able to take a snapshot, a capture of just that noise, and then playing around with trying to remove it is going to be more effective than this adaptive noise reduction for most things, not for all things. And it's a good way to kind of understand the process. So I'm going to show you this here first, and then we'll do a couple of various options, takes on this using different techniques. Fascinating. Crazy around. Very cool. Okay. So what I want to do, because I can see the noise where I'm not talking, okay? And by the way, we could go into the spectral frequency display. Now, again, I'm not going to go into all of what this means. That was last week's lesson, or Monday's lesson. But we know that we're looking at frequency over time. And when I look at this, okay, you can already see, you see that there's like these lines going through. This is probably some of that zzz, some of that 200 hertz hum and rumble coming from the gardeners out there. You can see there's some stuff like this. You can actually hear it. I don't even know if you can actually hear that. Let me amplify that for you so you can hear it. I'm making a frequency-specific selection. So that leaf blower is actually blowing like a pure tone, all right? And we just amplified that and heard that. So all of that is going on inside this file, and you can see there's kind of this consistent linear mess going on in a couple different places. Can you see down here? You can actually visually see the pattern. Oh, wait, hold on. You can't see it there. Remember, these are frequencies, right? So we're seeing low, raising to high, and then getting consistent. Okay, you can actually see what that leaf blower looks like. They were super low down here, so you're not going to hear those. Those are the fundamentals. So we can identify visually all these things. Now, because this noise is actually changing a lot, this is actually a better case for adaptive. But I wanted to point out the technique that I will often show, which is find a piece of isolated noise like this. Okay. Now, again, we're going to use our eyes because while we can see that there's some stuff going on up here, most of the noise based on the color, right, really lives below about 1K. 1 kilohertz, right? We can see, remember, color is amplitude. So the closer it is to yellow, the louder the amplitude. The closer it is to black, the quieter the amplitude. So it is visual art. Indeed, you could absolutely stick it on a wall. I don't know about this selection, but I can show you some better ones later. This is absolutely CSI level investigation stuff. The gardener did it. You are so right, Odin. And we covered some of that on Monday's lesson as well, because Spectral is absolutely CSI kind of stuff. So because we can see that, that's a good thing for us, because remember, a lot of our vocal fundamentals, the sound of voice and things, a lot of that lives certainly below 1K, but in that 1K range and above. And this area, this is like the stuff that's hardest to remove. So fortunately for us, there's not too much there that's kind of in the way of my actual voice. But there is a lot of stuff going on down here. So the first thing I'll typically do is just trying to find a little section here, and I'll select probably about as high as, maybe we'll go about 1.5K, and take a listen to this. That actually just sounds like me hitting the piano keys. And I'm going to right-click and capture a noise print. Okay? Capture noise print. Now, again, I'm showing you this first because I think that this is a better way to really understand. Now, whether or not this works really well on this, we'll find out. And then I'll show you adaptive. But adaptive is kind of the easy way. I want you to learn this, and then I'll show you another example of where this absolutely works brilliantly, okay? So we're going to take a snapshot. And again, what we're trying to identify is a pretty consistent pattern. You're looking for visual patterns where the noise is consistent, right? If there was some kind of, you know, floopy, swoopy, here, I'm going to draw it with a brush. If you had some kind of like right in that section right there, don't capture that section for noise reduction because that's inconsistent with everything else. All right. So you're looking for consistency. And again, you're using your eyes. So let's zoom back out. Let's go into noise reduction under the effects menu, process. Now when we go in here, it has already captured, it has already retained the profile that we just snapped, okay? Switch core. Oh, very good. Very good, very good. I'm glad Switch core. Yes, you're going to see it all here today. Super nerd alert. So you can see it here. Now, on the surface, you've got, and I actually think advanced is minimized by default. You've got like two sliders in here, okay? You've got your noise reduction slider. How much of that noise do you want to remove? And then you have the reduce by slider, okay? So you want to remove 100% of the noise, but at 20 dB, or 100% of the noise at 40 dB, or 50% of the noise at 40 dB. So you're really focusing on these two things mainly. I will typically not change the reduce by, the default is 40. I typically don't change that too often, all right? Which would mean that at 100%, we are attenuating that noise by 40 decibels. Sometimes you decrease that a bit. I seldom increase it, all right? If you've got more than 40 decibels of noise, I mean, again, really, now we're talking like CSI. Yes, you're going to do more tweaks to just reveal what's there, right? You're not trying to restore it to make it sound like it's a, Celine Dion record. I just say Celine Dion and record. You're not trying to make an album, So you're just trying to reveal something. So I will typically leave that at about 40. And the reduction amount, this is going to vary. Now, we'll get to advanced in just a moment here. I'm going to just temporarily set this spectral decay to 0. I will come back to that and I'll tell you why. When spectral decay is set to 0, though, and this is something that you want to take note of, that means that we're using what's called a subtractive method of noise reduction, which really means that we have music or talking with noise. We identify the noise. This is supposed to be me like 10 minus 5 equals 5. So we are subtracting. We're subtracting noise from something. Subtraction is fairly destructive, okay? And can often leave you with artifacts. But this is kind of the way that it's been done for a long time. This is the way that a lot of algorithms work, even still today. And it can be very effective. So what we can do is we can actually enable play here. And I'll just kind of skip ahead. I'm going to my time selection tool, shortcut key T.
Time to hesitate.
All right. Now, again, I can't really hear
thing
so
fell.
much of this, and I'll tell you what else I'm going to do. I'm going to mute my microphone for a second because let me say one other thing before I start noise reducing. To do effective noise reduction, you've got to be in a sonically it doesn't have to be treated, but controlled environment, right? If you're in a room with a lot of air conditioning and you're trying to remove the sound of air conditioning, good luck, all right? You might remove it, but you're probably going to overprocess it because, you're listening, you're not isolated enough. And because I'm talking to you now, there's an enormous amount of aircon and other noises flying into my mic. So I'm just going to mute myself for a second, play back the file when I can hear that noise, and start adjusting that reduction slider, okay? So bear with me for just a sec. See what I mean? See how much noise was there? Okay. So I decided at around 89%. Now that's pretty aggressive, but the noise is, again, fairly confined to a pretty small range. And when I click apply on here, okay, eggshell walls all around, very good. Crisis around. Zoom in. Holy schmolies. Now what do we see? You just went, okay. A lot of that reddish orangey stuff is gone. Yes. Before, take note, take note, take note. After. Color is amplitude. So we have just attenuated, removed, subtracted nearly all of that noise, if not all of it. And you can see that very clearly because what used to be, There used to be like this continuous red in between all of these sections. Now it's black, and we're just seeing little snippets of things behind, little transients peeking through, okay? And when we play it back...
We have 8 minutes left.
Hold on, you know what? Maybe you see my head a little. All right? I mean, again, you're hearing my... Let me mute this again. Sorry for a little snort right there. All right. Like, cousin it. Evangeline, is it the piano still too echoey?
Hey, a witch named Morwen? Yes.
Sounds clean, sounds beautiful. Now, if I undo it, look at all this stuff. Look at all this stuff that was there. Just look at it. All right? Why can't I remember what redo is? Shift, Command Z. That seems so easy. Visually, you can see what just happened, right? All right? You're amazed. You're in silence. Does that make sense? Okay. So essentially now we could go back through. Now you're saying, okay, well, I see this looks a little purple right there. Remember, purple is super low amplitude. And even if I highlight just that section here so that we're only listening to the highlighted frequencies, take a look on the meters down here. This is resonating at around minus 63, minus 60, minus 66. This is not a problem. Like, we don't need to touch this. It's when you start getting into that 2K, 3K, 4K range, when you start trying, and this is what a lot of other applications do. They try to denoise this very, very, faint sound in this range, and that's what leaves you with those swishy, swirly, metallic kinds of artifacts, okay? That's the death. That's the reason that people hate noise reduction, because you end up with something that doesn't have any whoosh or woo, but now it sounds kind of metallic, almost robotic at times if you go too far. And a lot of that can be prevented, again, by having a good listening environment. And I saw just Theater Geek is there. You can't even hear noise that we're trying to get rid of. Yeah, you got to be in a good environment. You got to have good cans, earphones. Cans is our 60s term there, by the way. That is not a euphemism. You got to have good earphones. You got to have good monitoring speakers. You have to be in a decent environment, okay? People ask all the time, well, that means I can't do it with my Apple earbuds or my Bose. Well, Bose is a different story, but Apple earbuds or, any of my Android headsets. I mean, you can, but what you're hearing isn't necessarily going to be representative of what is actually there. So that's not a, hey, you got to spend money to do noise reduction warning. It's just that be aware that your environment will dictate how well you repair these things, right? Noise reduction is meant for nerds in dark rooms, alone, for hours. I know this because I'm one of them, right? You got to be quiet, you got to be isolated, you got to be left alone so that you can hear the, or the, that's a 20 kilohertz tone right there. Some dog across the street is freaking right now. Okay? I can't estimate that enough. I can't emphasize that enough. That's not trying to be, I'm being very serious. You need a good listening environment to do noise reduction. Okay, so visually we understand. Good. What are some good enough quality speakers or headphones? Well, again, Sony 7506, MDR 7506. These are an industry standard. They're $99 US. That's not cheap, but it is the best bang for the buck. They have a traditionally kind of well-known, maybe a little bright leaning to flat sound. If it sounds good on these, it's pretty much going to sound good everywhere. And they're very good for clinical operations like noise reduction, restoration, and repair. As far as speakers go, I couldn't tell you anything commercial these days just because there's so many options. Just kind of anything. If you remember from 10 years ago where we had like computer speakers, that were powered by 2 AA batteries that you plug in with a 1/4 inch, an 1/8 inch mini jack or whatever that is. Don't use those, right? That's not knocking the 1/8 inch mini plug computer speaker powered with AA battery manufacturers. That's just that they will lie to you, right? What you hear on there is not representative of what's actually in that file, okay? So that's the thing. So does that mean it's a $50 pair of speakers or €100 or, $20? I don't know, but probably more than that. But good headphones are not that hard to achieve. I also wouldn't use something like Beats to do noise reduction. Why? Beats are great headphones. They're not flat. They're very bassy. They're very artificially, sonically enhanced. So again, for clinical noise reduction, not the best. Oh, Keyframer just found these for 79 bucks. Yeah, I mean, it's an investment, right? If you're doing this kind of work already and presumably going to be getting paid for it, it's an investment. So it's a good thing. Cool. Buddha Lover, how are you? Sweet Pea Cinema. Oh, hey, you're very welcome. Thank you, and thanks for joining. Hey, Dominic. Yeah, sounds good to you, right? Sweet. Do I prefer headphones over speakers? Well, Crisis, for noise reduction, it's usually a combination of both, you know? I'll do some of the most clinical stuff in headphones because you really want to be in it. If, you know, my current mixing room here isn't treated like my previous one, so it's a little too bright and reflective. But I will absolutely always check. It's like anything, you know? You edit a video on your Thunderbolt display, and then you check it on the iPad, and then you check it on a TV via HDMI, and then you look at it on YouTube. Same concept with sound. You're going to try it in your headphones, listen to it on studio speakers, listen to it on the crappiest speakers possible, right? Right? Mobile phone speakers, bright, tinny, thin, crappy, listen to it on there. If you don't hear the noise on there, and you don't hear any swishy swirlies, you did a good job. Always a good idea to listen on multiple sources. All right? I'm doing pretty well, thanks, Buddha. Okay, now in this example here, take a quick listen to this. Okay, you don't need to hear any more than that. Now, again, visually, if we were just looking at a waveform here, remember how with the file we just worked on a second ago, we were able to see that noise in the waveform display and select it? Well, here, again, and this is why if you haven't seen the Spectral class, please go back to lesson 3 and watch that. How can I make a selection of just noise? I can't see it here. So this is why 98% of the time, and I don't even do noise reduction that much because connections are cleaner today, right? We just don't encounter as much noise as we once did. It still happens, just not as often. And digitally, you're already pre-factoring in no noise by default, so we don't deal with hiss and things like we used to. This view doesn't help me at all. You can't do anything in this view. So if I go into the spectral frequency display, now I can visually identify, oh my goodness, there's not only a ton of noise, but there's like all different kinds of noises. And once again, you can see we've got these like weird, you know, anytime you see something very linear, and we can listen to these. Right, you move this up, you're hearing all the harmonics of whatever this buzz beep is. Nasty, okay? And then you've got this up here. Pleasant. And then you've got this here. And then you've got all this. Kind of low-end rumbly, right? Okay. Now, once again, this is from an air traffic controller, all right? So we're just trying to reveal what's underneath. Predator view, exactly. Okay. Thank you, Z Salad Fork. You got 3 different chords with your Audio Technica. Got sick of the curled chord. Ha ha ha. Very cool. Now here, this file happens to be, look at this. This is a strange sample rate. It's 13 kilohertz. Not standard at all. 16-bit mono. Now, while I could do more careful selections, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later, again, I'm not so concerned about that. I just want to reveal what's under this, what's underneath, okay? And you can very clearly see here in this section, this is where talking is, okay? It's here. We can actually see it, all right? And all this other stuff is in the way. So I'm going to choose my time selection tool, and I'm simply going to select across everything here, all right? Nice and consistent. How long should that be? It doesn't have to be very long. It just has to be consistent, all right? Consistency is the key. Right-click, capture noise print. Noise reduction, process. Select the entire file, because now I want to apply what I'm doing to the entire file. Now, once again, I'm not going to change any of these advanced settings yet. We haven't gotten there yet. I'll talk about why we want to do that later. We're still in this subtractive method, okay? So 0% spectral decay means subtractive noise reduction. We're going to reduce by 40. Now, I'm just going to go 100%. I don't even need to listen to this. By the way, you also have options in a lot of our noise reduction effects to just output noise by itself. So if you want to hear what it is that you're actually taking out, you can do that as well. That's really annoying. So we'll just leave that. And that would actually leave you with a file of just the noise. There's some thinking, or there was some thinking in the past, where if you outputted just the noise and then took the file and kind of inverted the phase and summed the two together, that they might drop out. That doesn't always work, but that's one way that you could do it, kind of an old school way. Don't even be concerned about that for now. 100%, 40 dB, let's click apply. I would never typically use 100%, but we're not trying to make, again, Rihanna's next single here. We're just trying to hear what's going on underneath. You can see a visual difference. There still appears to be some noise in here, but let's take a listen now. Okay, now at least we can hear it. It's somewhat intelligible. Now, again, if we wanted to go a step further, okay, this stuff, which is now kind of strange and artifacted sounding, all right, we might want to take a profile of this, or one of the other things we can do is we can make a selection like this. And if we just are trying to reveal what's there, delete, and it leaves a hole, but now, okay, so before, after. Okay, and similarly, if we wanted to go even more aggressive, now that we're probably going to be removing some of the little fundamental, although this is this sounds like air comms. So do you guys know what the frequency response of analog telephone lines was? Does anybody know? Mind blown, Z Salad Fork. My mind's blown for sure, Lady Rick. Nice. Lazy Rick. Sorry, not Lady Rick. Lazy Rick. All right. 400 to 4K, approximately. So that's why there's actually no voice below 400 hertz. So we're in good shape here. I can actually just delete that too. And now when I listen, okay, so again, just a moment ago before, and before that, okay, visually identifying where the noises live. Now that's using the standard noise reduction. Now, I talked about adaptive and why adaptive can be useful. And by the way, this technique that I just showed you, air conditioning, computer fans, even gardeners, hiss, okay? Camera noises if you're still using tape-based cameras. This technique can be used for that. And the important thing that you need to walk away remembering is we're making frequency-specific selections, okay? See where the noise is, only remove it from where you can see it. Do we want to try and remove noise in this little area right here? Largely no, okay? Would I want to try and do a very specific frequency selection right in this area right here? No. I mean, there might be a little bit of hiss back there, but that's not what's in the way, right? Remember, color is amplitude. This is purple black. This is very low amplitude. You can see it, all right? Minus 57, that's not our problem. Our problem is that stuff right there, okay? So we're visually identifying. Now, that's using noise reduction, the standard noise reduction effect. Now, when we talk about just pure ambient sound, I said before, like being outdoors. Now, this can include wind, but I'm not talking about wind that's overtaking your file. We'll get to that maybe at the end. That's kind of like the $1 million restoration technique. I feel like I should be charging you for that. I can't. That's super valuable, and we'll get to that. And that's really kind of one of those holy grail things, people trying to remove wind noise. And there's a very not absolute nor guaranteed, but easy technique to try and fix windy files. So in this one, this is an interview that was shot outside in South Africa, and it just has the ambient sound of birds and like a light breeze and chirping and that kind of stuff. So take a quick listen to this.
Being on the job
and also there's an interviewer, but I'm just going to increase the audio of the interviewer because that's where a lot of that ambient noise is contained. She's off mic.
Perfect. And I don't know if you're in a position to answer this because he has sort of aimed it at ranges, but he says, what are some of the challenges of being...
Okay, so you can hear all that, right? Even with my mic on. It's just, they're outside, okay? Now again, visually here, maybe, like right there, if I look at this, okay, she's talking just right there, so get rid of that. So maybe this little bit right here that I'm looping, maybe that's okay, but if you look at this spectrally, all right, once again, we're looking for consistency. We're looking for patterns. And when I look at this, all right, there's just, now obviously this is her talking off mic, right? This is the guy talking.
Look, I think one of the biggest challenges is...
We can see that there's some kind of rumble stuff going on down here, but it's not consistent visually. Right? You're not going to hear below 100 probably on the stream right now anyway. And then the stuff in the middle, yeah, it's fairly consistent, but you can even see the color, it changes. It seems to go more red, a little more orange as she's talking. Things are kind of swelling in and out. So using a capture profile, like trying to find just a section and then capturing a profile, capturing a noise print, is probably going to be a little difficult here because it's not consistent. So this is where now we're going to go into adaptive noise reduction. And this one is going to do just that. It adapts to the change in noise over time, all right? This filter is one of those that it will surprise you in how well it'll do some things because it can shockingly remove everything very effectively without artifacting, even when things change a lot. There are other times when it can also leave you with a mess, so you just need to give it a try. Now, this is not complex. There's quite a few sliders in here, okay, which we're going to talk about very briefly. I can't really go into depth in all of them, but I will tell you what they all do now. So if we just look at them here, again, noisiness and reduce noise by, this is, it's funny, this is sort of the backwards equivalent of what we're doing in the other noise reduction effect. This noisiness percentage represents that top slider in the other noise reduction, and reduce noise by represents the bottom one. Now here, because of the way this adaptive noise works, the default is around 15. You can increase this. You see it goes as high as 40, just like the other one. But it doesn't let you go higher than 40 by design. So this one, I typically say, like, kind of start with the default and see where you're going. All right? So these two sliders effectively are the same. Now, fine-tune the noise floor. Now, this is something which, again, you have to listen for because you're really adjusting where in decibels that noise falls and where the program material begins. So this is something that you typically have to slide while you're listening, and we'll do that in a moment. Signal threshold, same thing. It's sort of the point at where the signal kicks in, the good signal, all right? So this may have to be adjusted accordingly, but we'll take a listen. And then this also has spectral decay and broadband preservation. Now this is something which is enabled by default, which remember we had disabled in the noise reduction effect. Spectral decay effectively means that instead of just subtracting, and this is not a subtractive process, this is actually an adaptive process. Instead of subtracting, it's going to look at the noise, it's going to look at the talking, and instead of subtracting it, it's simply going to attenuate, bring down that noise based on the amplitude of the material, the talking or the music, whatever it is. It's going to attenuate that. It's going to bring it down. And then when the singing or the talking stops, it's going to decay away. Okay? It's going to just fade away. So it's not subtracting, it's merely attenuating to the point where you no longer perceive it. It's still there, right? You're still leaving a little bit of the ambience, a little bit of the room, a little bit of the background. You're just taking it out of the realm of perception. So this means less potential artifacting, smoother sound, cleaner noise reduction, all right? So if we start this, we'll just have it enabled by default here. And by the way, there are a couple presets, and you can see there's a D-reverb single source. We can come back to talking about that. Light noise reduction, heavy noise reduction. I think there's just those three, actually, and the rest I added Twitch user vocals. Interesting. I added that one. If we go ahead and hit play, you're actually going to hear this kind of kick in, and then it'll start denoising. So take a listen, and I'm going to mute my mic again.
Photographing wildlife here at Sabi Sabi in comparison to anywhere else in South Africa?
Well, being an avid photographer myself, we're blessed with wildlife that is habituated to Land Rovers and to game viewing. So you tend to get these really close-up one-on-one encounters with wildlife that pretty much is unique. Things like leopard and lion, they see Land Rovers on a daily basis and are very comfortable with them being around us. So they go about their daily business doing what wild animals do and give you incredibly amazing photographic opportunities.
And I don't know if you're in a position to answer this because he has sort of aimed it at ranges, but he says, what are some of the challenges of being on a drive, and how do you prepare for any potential dangers that await you?
No, look, I think one of the biggest challenges is people watch television on a daily basis, and so they get...
Okay, as I said, you have to listen, right? And I can't have all this noise behind me because it's fairly subtle. So really now, what this did, and you can see here, it didn't leave all those black holes, and it actually left a lot of this lower frequency noise sort of still there. There's not a lot of it. Okay, you can see here, you're hearing some of the low-end fundamentals of his talking. Let me just get those out. All right. But again, this stuff is around -50, -57 here. We've got a couple of the fundamentals of his voice. This is not a problem anymore. It attenuated enough. And now this sounds very, very clean. And you can see that it really removed a lot of that high-end kind of mid-rangey wispiness. Remember, we're kind of in the 2K, 4K range here. You can see that it kind of zapped some things out right here. But it preserved the voice itself. It doesn't sound artifacted. It sounds pretty nice and natural. And we still hear a little bit of wind, a little bit of ambience, because he's outside. Okay? Hey, Magenta X. Adaptive has never really worked for sweet pea cinema. Yeah, and that's the thing. It can work amazingly well, and sometimes it just isn't going to do it, right? A lot of it really is based around setting those thresholds and the noise floor. And to make this really work, you have to listen. Now, where I think this falls a little flat is in the spectral decay here. Now, if you shorten this spectral decay, okay, this is going to give you what's known as a more gated kind of noise-reduced sound, okay? And I'll show you this on a different example, meaning that it's going to decay faster, right? This is milliseconds. So 100 milliseconds is a tenth of a second. 750 milliseconds is 3/4 of a second of decay. That's too much, right? That's going to let too much of that noise kind of linger. So you want it fairly quick. And again, I think the default is 184 or something like that. Now, if I undo, let me just undo what we did here a moment ago. Let me pull this back up again. And let's go to something like the heavy noise reduction preset. All right, and take a listen.
He says, what are some of the challenges?
All right, this actually isn't going to preview very well in real time, so I'm just going to apply it. That's what you're hearing those little clickies for. Now, when we look at the UI now, okay, you can see there's a lot more black, right? Meaning that we've really attenuated, we've really removed an enormous amount of that ambience. And by the way, when we talk about the decay, can you actually see on the waveforms here, like how the color goes from red to orange to purple to black? You can actually see visually, you can see the fade to silence, the fade to black. The spectral decay, the colors in the spectral view going into oblivion, all right? You can visually see what it's doing. But sonically...
Amazing photographic opportunities, and give you incredibly amazing photographic opportunities.
Okay, even on that little bit of his S's there, it's sounding a little, I'm hearing a little swishy swirliness. So again, this is where, even if I were trying to use that heavy reduction preset, you're going to ultimately want to adjust the noise floor and these thresholds. There is no value that's going to work for everything. It's case by case. That stinks. I know. Like, how can there just not be one that works for everything? It just doesn't. You have to do it on a case by case. But you can absolutely find and identify what that is. And this effect may not do it for you. That's the thing. But that's why we offer multiple options. Now, like I said, for most things, choose the default or light noise reduction. Don't take a profile. Drop this on. You're doing, you know, capturing audio outside with a zoom or a Tascam. Honestly, 90% of the time, this does a great job. And if you want to back off the noise a little bit, the reduction, adjust that reduction amount, right? Instead of 40 dB, make it 15 or 25, or adjust the percentage, right? Leave a little bit of it in there to retain some of that natural ambience, okay? Now, when we were talking about air conditioner, hum, buzz, these things we want to subtract out, right? I don't want to preserve the air conditioner sound. I don't want to preserve the buzz of a bass. I do want to preserve some of the natural room ambience. I do want to preserve some of the natural hiss or the elements that exist in hiss. You know, there's a lot of frequency content that exists in hiss, which is why, oh, I'm glad you're loving it. Sandwich Man got bread. Awesome. Hey, Vivini. You want to preserve some of that. So that's why we use spectral decay. So keep this in mind. Subtractive noise, no spectral decay. You're trying to really remove things in their entirety, all right? Rumble, buzz, and I'll pull this one up too to show you that. Where is it? Bass amp. Okay. So, and I'll show you, again, another noise reduction thing here and then show you a better way to do it. So this is a bass amp. This is a bass recording. I played this the other day, I think, too. Just let me mute myself. There's a nasty 60 cycle hum in here with all the harmonics and a lot of buzz. Probably from just kind of like a semi-dirty connection or something. So take a listen. I'm going to mute myself. You'll hear it better. Okay, so everybody hears that? Okay. And we can see, friends who studied spectral frequency with me on Monday, where's the fundamental? 60. What does that tell us? It tells us this was recorded in the United States, right? Because we're at 60 cycles, whereas Europe and I think rest of the world are at 50. So we're hearing that. We're hearing all the subsequent harmonics, and that permeates the entire file. You can actually see. And then, by the way, this was not doctored. I recorded this. It was dirty. And I'm like, all right, well, I know I'll fix it later. It's not a problem. But this is how the recording turned out. And all that noise is in there the whole time. Yeah, switchcore. You've got that strat. You know that 60 cycle hum. Another holy grail of noise reduction. Echo. Any tips are not possible. Sweet Pea Cinema. The honest truth, you know, it's not really possible to remove echo. I know there's other filters out. You just saw in our adaptive, we have a D reverb. They never really deliver. The best, because the problem is, it's not so much the reverb that is the problem. It's often the distance to the microphone, the subject to where the sound was captured. And you can't, no matter what you do, you can remove all the noise between the space, but I'm still going to be here, right? This used to happen a lot. We used to do a lot of work with, or I used to do a lot of work with wedding videographers, who would often be, you know, where the organ is in the top of the, you know, little balcony of the church area, capturing sound all the way down in the front. So they're getting all the echo of the venue, and you can kind of hear what they're saying. But so we could gate. There's techniques for gating out the decay of the echo. You can use, I often talk about EQ to enhance the vocal fundamentals, just to make them more present. But you're never going to be able to remove that, you know, 100-meter distance from the microphone to the subject. And that's the problem. So it'll still sound far away, right? Maybe a little less echoey. But the real technique is to gate and to use careful EQ to emphasize vocal fundamentals if it's voice that you're trying to preserve through echo. Outside of that, I've never heard any that delivered something that was like, oh, now it sounds dry. No, it's always going to sound processed and affected. I've never heard one that didn't sound mildly processed where it was really necessary. Okay, so now, under effects, noise reduction. So far we've done noise reduction and adaptive. We've got something here called the Dehummer, and you might think, well, we've got hum in here, let's use the Dehummer. Okay. Go into the Dehummer, and they actually happen to have remove 50, remove 60. Perfect. Where am I in the world? 60 hertz. Excellent. Bass filter. Frequency, 60 hertz. Great. The Q width is 60, meaning 1 octave. So every subsequent octave of these harmonics. And then you can choose the number of harmonics, which goes up to 8 and is finite. You can only go up to 8. You can adjust the harmonic slope, which essentially is, you can see here on the frequency graph, based on percentage, the aggressiveness of the attenuation of those subsequent harmonics. Okay, I'll generally leave that at 50 if I use it at all. And then you also have the option to just output hum. Now, while this might seem good, and if I apply it, it does just that. It takes out all of that hum without hurting the bass, by the way. Right? There's no holes in the bass file itself. It did a brilliant job. The problem is that this noise was more complex than that. And you can see that outside of those 8 harmonics, all this other stuff is left there, right? So the bass is still going to sound, we're not going to have the low-end hum, but we're going to have the mid-range buzz. Take a listen. Okay, so my point in showing this to you is that you might do this and then get perplexed and go, well, shoot, how do I... It only gives me 8. I guess I could change the center frequency to some other variable of 60 and remove it. Nah, easier. Noise reduction. So in here, make a selection of just noise. It looks like it goes all the way up to approximately 3K. Maybe even go a little bit higher. Right-click, capture noise print. Oh, I need a slightly longer duration. That's what that was telling me. No problem. You need approximately 25,000 samples, by the way. Capture noise print. Noise reduction. Process. Yay! Crisis around. Select entire file. Spectral decay. Are we going to preserve some of this? Do we want to preserve some of that buzz? Right? Just attenuate it so that way it's still there, but we want the bass? No. Subtractive. Spectral decay at 0. Now, noise reduction, again, for buzz and hum, this is confined to some ranges that, I mean, we can listen to it. I'm just going to apply it here because I don't want to have to take off my headphones again. But take a look now. Right? And I can amplify, just like I did before, 15 dB. Now, you're hearing a little bit of hiss up here, maybe. So if I wanted, now I just amplified that 15 dB. That is not natural. You can actually see what it did to the waveform doesn't need to be amplified. So I'm artificially, look, I just totally clipped this audio just so that you could hear it. There's nothing there, okay? And how do we know this? Because visually, here's what it was like before. Right? And after. Zzz, gone. Okay? So the noise reduction effect is not only for, again, but also for buzzes, hums, and other consistent sounds. And used in this subtractive way, it really will zap all this out. No buzzing. Got it? Love it. Cool. You dig? You get? You understand? Cool. Okay. All right, we've got about 10 minutes because I started 5 minutes in. Let's see. Let's do, before we get to clicks and things, I want to show you. All right. Let's do clip restoration. This is an integral part of noise reduction. So here's another example where, now this was a lav mic recording of mine. This is a guy named Derek Hall. He's the CEO of the Diamondbacks organization in Phoenix, Arizona, baseball team.
Tonight Show, filling in for Johnny Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles.
Okay, so I did this interview with him. He's talking about a guy named Joe Garagiola, a very famous ball player who passed away a few months back. And when he said this word, actually interviewing, you can actually even see on the waveform here, it's digitally clipped. It clipped the preamp. This is a very common occurrence. Clipped transients. And he said it again here, on the couch.
On the couch. Couch.
And you can hear it just sounds a little crunchy. And it's flat-topped, waveforms should never look flat-topped, okay? So I had one opportunity to record this guy. I couldn't go back and do it. And really, you could just see it's flat. So this is bad. So to get rid of flattened attack transients like that, we have something called the diagnostics panel, which offers a couple of unique filters. The one that I'm going to focus on here being the declipper, okay? I'm going to choose a preset here called Restore Lightly Clips. Now this will work if you have an attack transient. Transients are very short moments of audio, bursts, right? So Beatles, actually, that sound, not if you've got distortion for that long, this technique will not work. This is those moments when, happens to me on stream all the time, you get too excited, it gets too loud in that one moment and it distorts. Up to around 12 dB, this can usually repair those with astonishing results. So I'm going to choose the declipper, I'm going to choose Restore Lightly Clipped, and I'm going to scan. And when I do that, it tells me that it has 91 problems detected. Go ahead and repair all. And when I do that, you can see that it attenuated, right? It brought down the audio by approximately 4 dB. But now, what was once squared off at the top, also known as flat-topped, actually, we've restored the transient peak. We've restored the dynamics of this. So now when he says, actually interviewing the Beatles.
Johnny Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles. Carson and actually interviewing the Beatles. I mean, here's a guy who got to interview Paul McCartney and John Lennon on the couch. On the couch.
Okay. It's perfect. Here's before. Look at it. Look at the waveform.
On the couch. On the couch.
You can hear it's couch. It actually has like this nasty distortion to it. Here it is afterwards.
On the couch. The couch.
All right. I've saved so many interviews and many others like you who've tried this process doing just this, okay? Is it going to fix everything? Absolutely not. Can it fix many things surprisingly well? Yes. And it's amazingly fast too. So, declipper found in diagnostics, preset Restore Lightly Clipped. You can also do Restore Normal. The main difference there is that it won't perform an attenuation. So often after you restore clipped peaks, what will happen is you'll end up with audio that actually goes above 0. Okay, it actually goes above 0 dB. That's fine. We're always working in what's known as 32-bit float. You can see it down here. Those extra 8 bits, because we're recording in 24-bit technically, those extra 8 bits are used for rounding, processing, and effectively giving you this kind of unlimited dynamic range so that you can bring it back down into range and preserve it. So if you performed a normalize on this section right here, all right, under amplitude compression, normalize, and we just brought it down, let's just say even a dB, all right, this peak is actually okay. And you can see it's not flat-topped, it's not squared, okay? It actually restored it, even though we just saw that it was above 0, okay? So that's why I choose Restore Lightly Clipped, because it automatically implements a 4 dB attenuation. By the way, if you go into settings, you can modify and adjust all of these. Now, we don't have time to cover every single one here. They're pretty self-explanatory, though. Gain, that's just the output gain after it applies the declipper. Tolerance, how much amplitude variation is allowed right before it starts to try and fix. And then minimum clip size, 3 samples. Again, your clipped samples, your actual, remember, they're 48,000 samples per second. So the minimum amount of clipping, you want that value to be fairly small. So I think 3 samples is typically where that can be found. All right. Tweeted, very nice. You're very welcome, sweet P Cinema. Vivini, nice. Sweet. Okay. All right, we got 5 more minutes here. So a little bit on declipping there. Declipping. Let's go to, not plosives. Let's do tape hiss. Okay. Actually, you know what? Before we get to tape hiss, let's do other sounds. All right. Now this one is a little ridiculous, but I show this because this is a perfect example of sounds that are not consistent. I mean, sounds that are consistent, but they wouldn't work with a noise reduction filter because it's going to be looking for constant versions of a particular sound. Case in point, here we have some ambience. You can actually see this. It's called Tree Frog Interrupts Crickets. Take a listen. Your mind hurts, sweet pea. Sorry about that. All right. So we've got some tree frogs. Now I love frogs, but I don't want them in this particular. I love the ambience. Not trying to denoise. You know, this kind of sounds like a swamp or something, right? Swamp. It sounds like a swamp. Kind of Everglady. All right. I like everything else. I just don't want these tree frogs. Now I could come in here and just kind of delete them too, but that's going to be a bit destructive. All right. I mean, in my cans, I'm hearing. You actually hear a dip because we're removing like 3 kilohertz range. Not good. We want to keep the background. We just want to get rid of the frogs. I'm going to choose our spectral paintbrush. And you must be in the spectral view to make this work. And I'm simply going to... Actually, hold on. Let me make my brush size bigger. Better. I'm going to paint on this. I'm going to hold down the Shift key. I'm going to paint on this. Paint on this guy. Just like that. All right? Make 3 selections here. Effects. Learn sound model. So now I'm going to use a different technique to actually learn a specific sound so that only that sound gets removed anywhere that it's present, regardless of where it happens or how consistently it occurs. Let's go up into Sound Remover. Now, again, you've got lots of different presets here. I'm going to choose the defaults for a start, just to see what this does. All right. Model complexity, refinement, enhanced suppression, complexity, and refinement. This is not speech. We can turn that off. Okay. Click Apply. Okay. And they're gone. Now, it did, you can see, it went a little aggressive. There's still some stuff here. This is almost entirely black, though. So maybe we back it off a little. Maybe we just amplify some additional noise, right? Or maybe we take a sample of something like this. I'm going to freak you out right now. Watch this. Maybe I sample something like this. I'm going to copy that. Make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Let's redo the sound remover. Okay. And maybe where I am, I could do something like this. I could do a mix paste overlap. Okay. And I could actually overlap. Oh, sorry, that didn't visually work. Oh, because I did a pattern repeat. Sorry. I could do a mix paste, and I'm not going to loop paste it 40 times. That was the mistake I made there. I can crossfade these in and overlap if I wanted to, and just bring down the copied audio a little bit like that. Okay, and replace that if I felt like there was a hole there. I don't have to do that. The point is, the sound remover. Actually, yes, this is photoshopping in Audition. That's exactly what it is. Taking it even further here. Now, this is a ridiculous example, but this will kind of show you the power of this. So this is, you'll hear there's some sirens. This is recorded at a skate park. All right. And you can hear all the skating, and then you hear some dude talking at the end.
When I think of a trick, I don't know, when I'm sitting in my house, so I come down here and learn it.
All right, that's actually Danny Way. All right, you guys know the skateboarder Danny Way. This is from a documentary that was cut by Jacob Rosenberg that we featured years ago, being cut in Premiere. So once again, I'm going to take my spectral paintbrush. I want to get rid of those sirens, right? And I'm going to come down over here. Let's make this around a 13-point brush. And I'm simply going to trace one cycle of the siren. Now, isn't this fascinating? When you're looking at the spectral view, you can really see, you can see the pitches, right? So you really begin to understand what sound looks like and where those frequencies lie. Oh, whoops, I didn't hit shift, sorry. It's okay, I'll do it again. So here's the harmonic, hold down shift. All right, I'm not even being super accurate here. Okay, like that. All right. Get this one up here. And there's like a couple little bits up here. These are kind of inconsequential, but I'll get them anyway. All right. Effects, learn sound model. Okay. Deselect, sound remover. I'm going to keep with these defaults. By the way, there actually is a remove siren. I don't know why. I modified these defaults a little bit. Let me go ahead and just apply this and see what it does. All right. The siren is gone. And when we take a listen now. All right, it's okay. Now, if I go back in here and if I try that, let me try that sirens. Less artifacts. Let's. Oh, enhance for speech. Apply that. Little less aggressive. All right. Before.
When I think of a trick, I don't know when I'm sitting in my house, so I come down here to learn it.
After.
When I think of a trick, I don't know when I'm sitting in my house, so I come down here to learn it.
Okay. Now, it's not absolutely perfect, right? You hear bees. Yeah, there's probably bees back there. But you get the idea, all right? So the sound remover can do some really unique things, too, for removing sounds that are not consistent, that are not like air conditioner, that hum, buzz, hiss, things of that nature. All right, we're technically a little bit over, but that's okay. It's my show. I can make it as long as I like, and we have 3 hours, but I want to wrap it up. So we've talked about noise reduction, the sound remover, adaptive noise, the dehummer. Last 2 things are hiss and click pop. Okay, so I'm just going to point this out because I talked about hiss. Now, hiss is, again, one of these things that are visually very easy to identify. Played this on the stream the other day. This is this is from an analog cassette recording of mine. Okay, and if we made a highlighted selection just up here, you can really clearly hear this hiss. Now, what you can also hear, if you were listening, and again, it's noisy in here, you're hearing a lot of because, as I told you, sibilance, guitar, you know, there's no cymbals on here, it's just guitar, bass, and vocals, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in music, on instruments, in your voice, that lives in that area where the hiss lives. So we don't want to subtract. We want to use spectral decay for that. We want it to gently attenuate that noise over time based on the amplitude, based on the loudness of the program material. So, but we really can't get a very good sample here. We have this stuff in the beginning. So that's pretty isolated. We could do that. But I often find for hiss-based things, just try the hiss reduction first, and then go into noise reduction and take a sample. Now, once again, you're going to adjust the noise floor, you're going to adjust the reduction amount, and then you see you've got that spectral decay, which by here I think is defaulted to around 15%. All right, with a precision factor of 5. It goes as high as 32. This is just going to increase your process time a little bit. I usually find that a precision of around 9 is where you want to be. Your FFT size, we talked about this before with regard to spectral displays. The higher the FFT, the better the reduction, but often there are sometimes diminishing returns because too much granularity can mean that now you're entering into this weird zone of is it noise, should it be preserved, and things can start to get weird. I find 4096 to be the best default there. Control points, I don't exactly even know what that's supposed to be referring to, but it's the default. Even I don't even know. What was control points? What does that got to do with anything? These, maybe. These are control points. Let's see. Nope, that's not control points. So I have no idea what that does. It doesn't matter. These are the things that you want to be concerned with. So let's take a listen here. Right. Noise floor all the way down, noisy. Let it kick in. All right. And now we can adjust the reduction. All right. So could you hear that? Let me mute it so you can hear it really better.
Taking my love away from me, oh now, some other guy now. It's taking away my sweet desire, oh now, some other guy now.
All right. And that's two simple sliders to get you started. And you can see we've, again, got some like defaults here, light and high. The control points never changes. I still really don't know what that's supposed to be. And then light. And again, you can actually plot specific frequencies. So if there are, you can do this in noise reduction too. Let's say there's really no hiss at 20, above 16K. You can actually graph it so that it ignores that section. And you can do the same thing in the noise reduction process view as well. You can actually say, here, I just need to capture a profile. You could actually say, ignore everything above 3K, only denoise. And as it turns out, most of the noise that it's detecting here is in that range in any case. But you can actually graph on here to tell it to ignore certain frequencies or to emphasize the reduction on certain frequencies. Okay. So you got a lot of flexibility here with regard to this noise. Get your hiss out of bed. How about a voice for Waze? I missed that. Okay. You can hear it through your studio cans. Good. You can hear no difference. Yes. Well, again, hiss, you gotta be in a good listening, but I can hear it, and I know people can hear it here. So you'll just have to believe me. All right, the very last thing I will show you here, declicking, and then we are going to segue into the regular broadcast today. So much to do. I'm amazed we actually got through all of it. You guys feel like this was pretty useful? Lots of nerdy information. Hiss reduction, dehummer, click pop remover. Oh, that's what we're going to do now. Adaptive, sound, and this one. Okay, so let's go into click pop. All right, so I've got a file here transferred from vinyl. A little bit of Jimmy Witherspoon, okay? Play a couple seconds of this. This is not treated. This is right from my vinyl. In fact, the only thing I'll do, I'll just bring this up to 0. I won't worry about that one click right there.
I'm getting sick and tired. I'm getting sick and tired of the way you do. Those spoons gonna poison you.
All right, clicks and pops. Again, easiest way, fastest way, automatic click remover. Choose this. You got a couple presets in here, medium, light, heavy. All right, if we go to medium reduction, let's just do, let's start with medium. Go ahead and click apply. There's only 2 sliders here, so you can't really mess it up that badly. And if you take a listen now, couple little thuds.
I'm getting sick and tired of the way you do.
All right, here's before.
I'm getting sick and tired of the way you do.
All right, easy, effective. Obviously, you can modify those sliders a bit more if you want more control. Now this, I could spend an hour on this effect. I almost never use this anymore because it's almost too complex, and I don't actually declick any of my vinyl anyway. I leave all that stuff in there. This one here, which I'm just going to briefly pull up, and then we have to switch the stream. Scan for all levels. It's going to find all the clicks and pops. Now you've got all these various thresholds, minimum, average, maximum. You can do a second level verification, so a multipass to reject clicks, to discriminate, again, fixing more, fixing less, finding more, finding less. You then have the actual correction. You can have oversamples. You can choose the process size. These typically you're not going to move so much from the defaults. You can detect big pops only, right? So some of these big clicks like you see down here. You've even got the option to ignore light crackle, right? The surface noise. Don't pay attention to that. Or maybe if you only have surface noise, don't detect big pops and don't ignore the light crackle, okay? A lot of options here. The one other thing I want to just point out, when people declick things that have horns on them, horns, when you record trumpets, any kind of brass, when you look at the waveform, right? The waveform is typically centered, right, on that negative infinity line, the 0 crossing. Horns are often what are known as asymmetrical waveforms, meaning they're actually not balanced They're either going to be a little bit above or a little bit below. And that's because of the nature of the sound and how it's captured. You will always see this with trumpets. When you're trying to declick horns, those asymmetrical waveforms are also present when you have clicks and pops. They are represented also somewhat off axis. So that means that if you have horns that do things like ba, a lot of times you're going to clip, you're going to wind up removing some of those attacks. So that's what pulse train verification does. This is actually sort of a preventative measure to not remove the attack transients of asymmetrical recorded sound. How's that for nerdiness? That's more like a 104, but does that make sense? So if you're trying to, if you've got a Tower of Power album or a Chicago album or something else with horns, and you're trying to declick it and you find that all the horns are starting to sound weird, like they're getting clipped, enable pulse train verification, and this will smooth out some of those issues. All right? So, click pop elimination, automatic click pop elimination, noise reduction, sound removal, adaptive noise reduction, dehumming, declicking, depopping, de-distorting with the declipper effect. We've covered like 10 different methods of noise reduction. So I hope you found this useful. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is part 4. This will be available on VOD right now when I hit stop. We went about 14 minutes over. Sorry for that. Now, stick around. I'm stopping the stream and coming right back, and we're going to focus on creating video and stock content for Adobe Stock and how to become a contributor. This is something we've been talking a lot about. I want to talk to you about this. So thank you so much for joining me for this Audio 101. And now we're going to segue over to Premiere Pro. So stick around. You may have to refresh your browser or refresh your app. I'll be back momentarily. Thank you so much.